Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I'm Philip Sellwood. I'm privileged and proud to be the chair of Zemo, and I'm chairing a goodly part of today's event. A few domestics first and foremost, if I may. There's no fire alarm planned. If you do hear a fire alarm, we leave by the reception and there will be fire wardens available to take us to the muster point, which is at cockpit steps. Firstly, a word, as always, for our sponsors. I'd just like to thank Certus Energy and UKPN, who sponsored today's events, and also for Clipper Automotive for exhibiting in the hall. A few social media cues for you. For those who tweet, the tweet is #Zemo Summit 24. And several people have asked about Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi is George 1847. I'm sure that's significant in the engineering world, but I can't quite place it myself. And we also have something that's a bit unusual. Some of you may have used it. We have something called Mentimeter. Mentimeter is an interactive app, and it can be found in the brochure via the QR code, or you can access it on the number that's on the screen. And the reason why that's significant is that during each session, because you'll have seen from the agenda that we've got a pretty heavyweight set of speakers throughout the day, and there will be some opportunity for Q&A, but with an audience of this size, the best way to try and get some interaction is through the app. And we'll be posing questions throughout the day in each individual session, and then at the end of the day we'll be summarising your responses to those questions right at the finish, and I'll announce that when we wrap up, and those will also be available after the event. But please use that app to make comments, vote, and also to ask questions. As I say, we've got a really tight schedule today, but I just wanted, at the heads up, to just mention 4 or 5 different things as by way of introduction before I introduce our first speakers. I think it's reasonable to say that this particular summit, this conference, couldn't have come at a more opportune moment. I'm told reliably that we now have 1 million electric vehicles on the road. We are, if you excuse the pun, driving towards the zero-emission buses, and we're also investing heavily in low-carbon freight. And rail, whilst we know there's a long way to go, is seeing serious attraction of investment. Now, today brings, I think for the first time for a long time, all of the main actors from Westminster, Holyrood and the Senedd, along with local government and the business community. And the reason that is important to convene this group of people along with yourselves is that collaboration is absolutely essential, and I'm sure we'll hear that word used a number of times during the day. Because as we pivot towards delivery, we all know that it can't be done by one single constituency. It will have to be done between business, the government sector, the local sector, and indeed the public sector as well. So one thing, again, we may hear today, but I think it's certainly personally very important to me as chair of Zemo, is that all of this transition, the decarbonisation of transport, is part and must be part of a just transition. And I've often been quoted as saying that if the road to net zero is not a just transition, then it's just a transition and it won't work. So it's really, really important that we think about the social aspects of that just transition. Second thing, just to emphasise, is urgency. We have a new UK government, and much has been done previously, and that's not a political point with a small or a large p. It's a fact. But we also know that we've got a hell of a long way to go. And one of the things that I hope that this summit will start to really stimulate is the necessity for greater scale, greater pace that is required. Now, we'll hear about the creation of the Net Zero Council, and indeed, equally importantly, the Strategic Advisory Group, which is advising on the delivery roadmap, and that's made up of what we think is the significant number of the best trade associations in the UK. So really warming to the theme I said earlier, if we don't do it together, we won't do it at all. But to end, or to start and to end, on a very positive note, some figures published actually literally an hour ago by ECUI tells us that as we sit here today on the 3rd of October, 4th of October, 750,000 full-time equivalent jobs in the UK are as a direct result of the move to net zero. That's 3% of the entire UK workforce. So that's the scale of where we are already, but the excitement must be the scale of where we are going forward.